I never expected things to play out the way they did that Christmas. To be honest, I thought everything was just going to be another regular holiday gathering with the usual family drama. But I was wrong. So wrong. Growing up, I always felt like I was invisible in my own family. My sister, Sarah, was the golden child. She was the one who could do no wrong. My parents would beam with pride every time someone mentioned her name, her grades, her achievements. Sarah could do no wrong in their eyes. Meanwhile, I was the afterthought. No matter what I did, it was never enough to get the same attention or praise. Sarah was the straight-A student, the perfect little angel who always followed the rules. I, on the other hand, was the rebellious one, the one who didn't really fit the mold of what they wanted me to be. I always felt like a second-class citizen in my own home. The comparisons were endless. Her achievements were celebrated, and mine barely registered. But then, something changed. I never expected to inherit anything from my family. I was always the other child, the one who was barely acknowledged. But when I graduated and started my own life, I quickly learned there was more to my family's financial situation than I thought. I wasn't the outcast, but I wasn't exactly the favorite either. But what if I told you that I had $5 million sitting in my bank account? And what if I revealed this to my family on Christmas dinner, knowing it would send everything into chaos? What if that was the exact moment everything changed? The dinner started like any other, until I saw Sarah walk in. Sarah always had that air about her, that look of superiority, the look that said she had it all figured out. My parents, of course, were practically fawning over her as she walked into the room, asking how her job was going, how many promotions she'd been up for. I could barely get a word in, but tonight was different. I knew what I had to do. I knew what needed to happen. It wasn't the perfect timing, but maybe it was. I had kept my secret for years, watching them lavish Sarah with all their attention. My mom, my dad. They never even seemed to notice me unless they had to. But now, it was my turn. It was my time to take control, to level the playing field. And what better way to do that than revealing a little secret that would rock their world? I sat there quietly, watching Sarah and my parents chat, preparing for the moment. When the dinner started, and the usual Christmas chatter filled the air, I finally spoke up. Actually, I've been meaning to tell you all something, I said, trying to keep my voice steady despite the whirlwind brewing in my mind. I've been keeping something from all of you, but I think it's time you knew. My parents stopped mid-sentence, their attention instantly shifting to me. Sarah looked up, her expression confused, but intrigued. I could see her brain already calculating what it could possibly be. Maybe she thought it was some life update, or an apology, or who knows? I paused for a moment, enjoying the silence, before dropping the bombshell. I've got $5 million. The silence in the room was deafening. You could have heard a pin drop. I could practically feel the air shifting as my parents exchanged glances, and Sarah's face drained of color. They all stared at me, trying to process what I had just said. Why, Mom blinked rapidly, as if trying to clear her mind. What do you mean, $5 million? She asked, her voice a little shaky. My dad was quiet, but I could see his mind racing. I kept my cool, leaning back in my chair, savoring the moment. I mean exactly that. I have $5 million. I've been working on some investments, and they paid off. I let it sink in for a second before continuing. I guess I'm not the broke, invisible child you thought I was after all. The change in Sarah's demeanor was instant. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. What are you talking about? She snapped, her voice rising. You have $5 million? Why didn't you tell us sooner? Why keep it a secret? I could feel the tension rising as everyone focused on Sarah, who was visibly angry, her face flushed with frustration. She was always the one who had everything handed to her, and now, the tables had turned. Suddenly, the golden child wasn't the only one with something to boast about. But it wasn't just her anger that was brewing. It was the fact that she was losing control, losing her place as the center of attention. As I looked at her, I could see the realization hitting her like a truck. The jealousy, the disbelief, the fury. She stormed off to the other room, and the atmosphere in the dining room changed instantly. My parents, flustered and unsure of what to do, sat there in silence, their eyes darting between me and the door Sarah had just fled through. Then came the inevitable question from my mom. Why didn't you tell us, honey? This was the moment I'd been waiting for. But before I could answer, there was a loud, unmistakable noise from the other room. It was Sarah, screaming. The sound of Sarah's yelling echoed through the house, growing louder with each passing second. My parents were frozen, unsure of what to do, while I sat there, my heart pounding. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about everything that had been building up for years. The jealousy, the resentment, the constant comparisons. And now, Sarah had lost control. Why Mom quickly stood up, her chair scraping loudly as she hurried toward the hallway. My dad followed her, looking back at me with a worried expression, but I didn't budge. I knew this moment was mine. They didn't get it yet, but they would soon. I leaned back in my chair, trying to savor the feeling of having all the power. For once, I wasn't the one waiting for validation. I wasn't the one trying to prove myself. No, now it was Sarah scrambling to keep her perfect image intact. Mom returned a few moments later, her face pale and her hands trembling. Sarah, she's furious. She said you have no right to hide something like that from the family, especially at Christmas, she muttered, her eyes glancing nervously toward the door Sarah had just stormed through. I knew this was coming. Of course, Sarah was furious. But I wasn't the one who had caused this. She was. She was the one who always had it easy, who had everyone's approval without ever needing to work for it. And now that I had something she couldn't take from me, she was losing her mind. That was the real issue here. I took a deep breath and looked my mom in the eye. Maybe she needs to hear the truth for once, I said, my voice calm but sharp. I'm not going to apologize for my success just because it makes her uncomfortable. For years, I watched as you praised her, as if she could do no wrong. Well, now it's my turn. I'm not invisible anymore. My mom's face twisted, a mix of guilt and confusion. Honey, it's not about that. It's exactly about that, I interrupted. You never saw me. You never noticed me until I had something to show for myself. I paused, letting the words sink in. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for the years of feeling like I wasn't good enough. But here I am, and here's the truth. Deal with it. Just as I finished speaking, the door to the other room slammed open. Sarah stormed back into the dining room, her face a storm of emotions. She was livid, her eyes wild with a mix of anger and disbelief. But I could tell there was something else there too, fear. Fear that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't the center of attention anymore. She pointed a shaking finger at me. You think this is some kind of joke? She spat. You have the nerve to tell us now? To show off like this? You're ruining Christmas. You're ruining everything. I didn't flinch. In fact, I felt a strange sense of satisfaction. For once, Sarah didn't have the upper hand. For once, she wasn't the one calling the shots. And it was killing her. But I wasn't done yet. I didn't ruin anything, Sarah. You're the one who's been pretending for years. You've been pretending to be perfect, to have it all together. But guess what? Nobody's perfect. And the sooner you realize that, the better. The silence that followed was thick, like the calm before a storm. Sarah's face turned a shade of red I had never seen before. She was seething, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. It was clear she wasn't used to being challenged. She was used to being worshipped, admired, and adored. But now, all of that was slipping away. She took a step forward, her hands clenched into fists. You don't get it, do you? She hissed. You think that money makes you special? That somehow, because you have this fortune, you're better than me? That you can just walk in here and take everything from me? I stood up, my own emotions starting to rise. No, Sarah, it's not about the money. It's about the truth. It's about showing you that I'm not just some shadow you can ignore. I've worked hard for everything I've achieved, and if that makes you uncomfortable, then maybe you need to take a hard look at yourself. For a moment, it seemed like Sarah was about to explode. She was shaking with rage, her face twisted in disbelief. But then, she did something I didn't expect. She broke down. Tears welled up in her eyes, and she crumpled into a chair, burying her face in her hands. Why didn't you tell me? She sobbed, her voice cracking. Why didn't you trust me? I'm your sister. I should have known. At that moment, I could feel a wave of satisfaction wash over me. It wasn't the satisfaction of seeing her cry. No, it wasn't like that. It was the satisfaction of knowing that for once, the playing field had been leveled. I wasn't the invisible one anymore. I wasn't the one left behind. I had taken control. But that wasn't the end of it. Oh no, because Sarah's meltdown wasn't just about the money. It was about something deeper, something darker, something that had been festering for years. And the truth was about to come out. Sarah's sobs filled the room as she slumped in the chair, her hands still covering her face. The tension that had been hanging in the air, thick and unbearable, suddenly felt like it was suffocating the entire room. My parents stood there, frozen in place, unsure of how to react. My mom looked torn, caught between comforting Sarah and confronting me for causing all of this. My dad, on the other hand, was trying to process what had just unfolded. He looked more disappointed than angry, which somehow made everything worse. For the first time in years, I realized how much I had wanted to see this moment. Not for the satisfaction of watching Sarah break down, but for the relief that I wasn't the only one carrying the weight of our family's expectations anymore. I hadn't asked for the attention, but now that it was on me, I wasn't going to let it go to waste. I wasn't going to be the one who shrank away while my sister got everything handed to her on a silver platter. Sarah, I don't think you understand, I said, my voice calm but steady. This isn't about you being better than me, or me wanting to take your place. It's about you never once acknowledging the pressure I've been under my entire life. You've had everything given to you, and I had to fight for everything I've ever earned. And even when I did, I was still overlooked. She looked up at me then, eyes red, the tears still streaming down her face. The anger that had been there moments ago had softened into something that resembled guilt, but it was hard to tell if it was genuine or just her way of trying to salvage what little pride she had left. I never asked to be the perfect child, she whispered, her voice shaky. But maybe I should have tried harder to see what you were going through. I just thought, I just thought you didn't care about any of this. You never talked about it. I could see the cracks forming in her facade now, but it wasn't enough to make me feel sympathy. She had lived her life under the assumption that she was entitled to everything. Perfect grades, perfect relationships, perfect future. She had never stopped to think about how it felt to be left in the shadows, to be told time and again that no matter what I did, it would never be good enough. Why didn't you trust me? She asked, her voice quieter now. Why didn't you tell me about the money, about everything you've been doing? For a moment, I almost felt bad. Almost. I thought back to the years when I had been the forgotten one, the invisible one. Maybe she didn't understand because she had never been forced to. Maybe she had never had to fight for attention. But that didn't excuse her behavior. Nothing ever did. I didn't trust you because you've never seen me for who I am, I said, my words slow and deliberate. You've always seen me as the screw-up, the one who couldn't keep up. I didn't trust you because I wasn't sure if you'd ever see me as more than just that. So I kept it to myself. I didn't want to risk being torn down again. And look where we are now. My mom, still hovering near the kitchen doorway, finally stepped forward. Her face was full of sorrow, her eyes soft but tinged with disappointment. This isn't how we should be dealing with things, honey, she said quietly. We're family. This isn't the time for this kind of confrontation. I stood up from the table, my eyes never leaving Sarah's. Maybe it's time for the truth, Mom, I said, my voice firm now. Maybe we've been pretending everything's okay for too long, and it's time for Sarah to see how it feels when the world isn't waiting at your feet. Sarah blinked at me, her hands still shaking as she wiped the tears from her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered, but I didn't know if I believed her. How could I? For years, she had been the golden child, the one everyone looked up to. And now that I had something she didn't, she was apologizing because she was losing control. It wasn't the apology I had waited for. It wasn't the one that would change anything. You should be sorry, I said, my voice hardening. But don't apologize because you've been caught. Apologize because you realize that for once, I'm not the one who has to keep hiding in your shadow. My mom glanced between Sarah and me, a mix of guilt and sadness on her face. Please, let's just talk about this calmly, she said, trying to de-escalate the situation. But I was beyond calm at this point. I was tired of playing nice, tired of being the one who had to sit quietly in the corner while Sarah took the spotlight. I don't want to talk about it calmly, I snapped. I've spent my whole life being told to sit down and be quiet, to let Sarah have her moment. But guess what? It's my moment now. It's my time to show you that I'm not invisible anymore. There was another long silence, the tension so thick that it felt like it was suffocating us all. Sarah was staring at me, her face a mixture of anger, regret, and something I couldn't quite place. Maybe fear, maybe shame. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and trembling. What do you want from me? What do you want me to do? Just let me fix this. I crossed my arms and looked at her, the years of resentment and hurt bubbling to the surface. Fix it? You think you can fix this by apologizing? You can't. You can't fix the years of making me feel like I was never good enough, of making me feel like I was the problem. But just as I was about to say more, my dad stepped forward, his voice rough with emotion. Enough. This isn't the way to solve anything. His eyes were intense, almost angry, but not at me. He was angry at Sarah, though I could tell he didn't want to show it. Sarah, you've been too focused on yourself. It's time you realized you're not the only one who's been carrying a weight. His words hit Sarah like a ton of bricks. She stood there, stunned, her face pale. I could see the realization dawning on her as the full weight of my words, and my dad's, finally sank in. For the first time, she was seeing things from my perspective, and I couldn't lie. It felt damn good. But before we could say anything more, Sarah collapsed onto the couch, her hands clutching her head as if trying to stop the thoughts racing through her mind. I didn't. I didn't know it was like that, she whispered, almost to herself. Was this the apology I had been waiting for? Was this the moment everything would change? Was Sarah finally realizing how much damage she had caused? The room was eerily silent, save for Sarah's ragged breaths as she sat there, her head in her hands. My parents stood off to the side, unsure of how to handle the situation. This wasn't just another one of our typical family arguments. It was something deeper, something that had been building for years beneath the surface, and it had finally exploded. I took a slow breath, feeling a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. Sarah was starting to understand the magnitude of what had just happened, but there was still so much left unsaid, so many years of hurt buried in the silence between us. You can't fix this with an apology, Sarah, I said, my voice firm, and I don't want you to try. You can't just undo all the years of favoritism and neglect. You can't take back all the times you got everything and I was left to pick up the pieces. You need to understand how it feels to be in my shoes, and honestly, I don't think you've done that yet. I saw her flinch at my words, and for a split second, I almost felt guilty. Almost. But then I reminded myself of everything I'd gone through to get to this point. Everything I had sacrificed for them to see me. I wasn't about to back down now. What do you want me to do? She asked again, this time with less anger in her voice. There was a hint of desperation there, as if she was looking for a way out of this mess. I'm sorry. I know I've screwed up, but I don't know how to fix it. Tell me what you want from me, and I'll do it. I stared at her, taking in her tear-streaked face and the helplessness in her eyes. Part of me wanted to tell her exactly how to make things right, to lay out some perfect, clean solution. But there was no easy fix for this. There was no neat way to undo the damage. You don't get it, do you? I said quietly, you've never had to work for anything in your life. You've always been the golden child, and now you're seeing what it's like to be the one who's been left behind, the one who's been ignored, the one who had to fight for everything. The words cut through the air, and for the first time, I saw Sarah's facade crack. She blinked rapidly, as though she were trying to hold back another wave of tears. I could almost feel her breaking down, but there was a part of me that didn't care anymore. She had to understand what it was like to be me, to finally see that I wasn't just the failure, the disappointment. She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand to stop her. Don't, I said. Just don't. You can't fix this with words. It's not about words anymore. I looked at my parents, who were still standing there, almost paralyzed by the tension in the room. My dad, his arms crossed over his chest, looked like he was about to speak up, but I knew he didn't fully understand what was going on inside my head. He still believed in the idea of family unity, of forgiving and forgetting, and as much as I wanted to believe that too, I couldn't. This isn't about forgiveness right now, I continued, my eyes never leaving Sarah's. It's about understanding, and I'm not going to forgive you until I know that you truly see me for who I am. Not as the screw-up you've always thought I was, but as someone who fought tooth and nail to make something of themselves. I could see her fighting the urge to lash out again, but there was something different in her expression now. The anger had shifted to something else, something I couldn't quite place. Maybe it was regret, maybe it was guilt, but whatever it was something real. Maybe this is what I deserve, she whispered, her voice cracking. Maybe I deserve to be left behind. I shook my head. You don't deserve to be left behind. But you sure as hell need to understand what it's like to fight for what you have. I've been fighting my whole life, and now I'm not going to just let you walk away from this without seeing how much it hurt. There was another long pause as the weight of my words settled into the room. For a moment, none of us spoke. But finally, my dad broke the silence. Sarah, he said, his voice softer now, almost like he was trying to console her. You need to listen to your sister. What she's saying isn't just about money or being overlooked. It's about her feeling like she's never been good enough, even when she gave everything she had. And that's something we've all contributed to. My mom, who had been silently watching this whole exchange, stepped forward too. Her eyes were filled with a mixture of guilt and realization. Honey, we didn't mean for you to feel that way, she said softly. But you have to understand that we didn't always know how to balance things. We made mistakes. I could see the guilt written all over their faces, but it wasn't enough. Not for me. Not yet. They had overlooked me for so long that their sudden concern felt hollow. They wanted to fix everything now that they saw the consequences, but they hadn't been there when it really mattered. This isn't just about you two realizing you made mistakes, I said, my voice steady but filled with the weight of years of resentment. It's about me finally getting the recognition I deserve. It's about me getting the validation I've earned through everything I've done on my own. I turned back to Sarah, who was now staring at me with a mixture of awe and confusion. This isn't over, Sarah. You've got a lot to make up for. But right now, you're finally seeing what it feels like to be the one who's always been invisible. And I hope you never forget it. There was another long silence, but this time, it didn't feel as suffocating. The tension between us had shifted, and I could tell Sarah was starting to understand, at least a little. I wasn't expecting an instant change, but this was the turning point. So after Sarah's meltdown at Christmas dinner, things between us were tense but different. My parents tried to fix things, but Sarah's bitterness lingered. Then, one day, I got a call. My mom said Sarah had been planning to destroy my investments, trying to get back at me by sabotaging everything I'd worked for. When I confronted Sarah, she admitted it, saying she wanted to make me feel the way she did, ignored and overlooked. But I told her she didn't need to tear others down to be seen, that she needed to build herself up. The anger I'd felt turned into something more disappointing. Pitied, I left their house that day, knowing the game had changed. I wasn't going to forgive her, but I'd made it clear. My success was mine, and no one, not even family, could take that away.
Honestly, I think Sarah really crossed the line here. She had everything handed to her whole life, and when her sister finally gets some recognition, Sarah tries to tear it all down out of jealousy. It's pretty wild. I get feeling overlooked, but that kind of revenge is just toxic. What do you guys think? Was Sarah justified in her actions, or did she go too far? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.